in between the two hallways. It had a in between where you get coffee and drinks, and I just spraddled out, one leg bent behind me and one forward, and I guess the water, whatever I was getting for him, I forgot him soup or tea or something, coffee, I don't know, whatever he wanted at the time. That slipped my mind, but I remember one lady coming up, and I was dead, but I was sitting there, and they couldn't revive me. I could still see. I wasn't out of my body yet, so I could see everybody around me, and they did code blue and come yelling to get me and took me down to the ER. And anyway, I was laying there. Some doctors, and they came in and called it and all that, and then they all left me, and then I came back, and then fortunately somebody, maybe the chaplain, came back. It seemed like, but they just said, wow, and I was back. She raised my hand, and it fell, but I had to go back up there, and they let me go back up there, and that evening I stayed they put him in ICU, and he couldn't stay. I sort of had experience of coming and going, but my body container wasn't in such bad shape as his. He had already missed a leg, and we'd been taking care of him for a couple of years off and on in the homes for him, and he had already had one night in November where he burned himself and me, and smoking in bed, and oxygen took the house on fire. So it was a very long year and a half or two at the end with him leaving his body, but he really wanted to go. So when he was in ICU laying in the bed, at the end, me and, we'd call these sisters up and stuff to come on up, because doctors said, he wanted to die, and he didn't want to have that, what they do now with this COVID-19, run down your throat to breathe for you, because I've had it done. It's terrible. I don't recommend it to anybody, but yeah, that thing they breathe for you and down your throat.
The respirator.
Yeah, he didn't want that.
Yeah, the respirator. And he has DNR,
that.
right? Do not resuscitate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, DNR.
Wait, you're still dead. How did you get alive again? Wait, you kind of. I'm stuck back where you were dead. So.
Well, they left.
How did you get back alive?
They left me in the ER. I talked to God. I don't know who puts you back in your body, but they didn't ever take me out. They left me there with, I call it fisheye, when you can see through your eye, but you're not out of body, because I do it a lot. But I had died. I died a couple of times. Remember, Jan, I've died several times. But I call it fisheye is when you go behind your eye, but you don't go into your brain. As a little kid, I've been into my brain and got stuck there. I was hostage there. So I don't ever want to get stuck back in my brain tissue again, the consciousness or the intelligence. But I was fisheye, meaning the cones, I dropped into my cones, but I could see out my lens, my eyes. So it's like looking through your own TV. So I saw the lady come back that was the chaplain, and I said something, can I go now? And she went, oh, my God, she's alive. She's alive. And so they called them back in, 3 or 4 guys at the end of the. And I said, well, what happened to me? He said, I don't know. He said, well, I do know, but people don't usually come back and live to tell about it. I was like, oh, you mean dying? I said, oh, yeah, I do that all the time. Don't worry about it. I said, well, I got to get back up, but I could hardly talk, because usually if you go really without oxygen, it's hard to pump it back, because it makes you real weak, like if you've ever came close to fainting when you die, at least like on your own. But I don't know. I think it was the shock. They gave some fancy name. I'm sure it's in the hospital file if I want to look it up. But they just
Tom
told
hasn't
me,
died yet. You died. Now, how long were you down there? How much time were you out?
I thought it was just a minute. I thought it was just a minute, but Tom said it was like 4 hours. So I thought it was just a minute.
Oh, so he's up there dying, and you're gone, and he's like, where is she? She can't die.
Exactly.
I'm dying.
Yeah.
So then go ahead. You're back up there.
Yeah, I heard him, and I knew I had to get back. I told him, no, he's dying. I've got to get with him. He's dying. They said, who? I said, my husband. They said, your husband's in the hospital? I said, yeah, where y'all picked me up. I was getting him something to drink. Oh, my God. So they don't know what to do except verify. They said they went and had one of those secretary girls that punches in the computers. But she went to check, and they said, sure enough, her husband's at blah, 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 blah. I didn't know the number. But they just asked his name. They said, yeah, he's on 4 or 5, or what, 519. So they said, you feel, you shouldn't be, we should admit you. They wanted to admit me in the hospital, do tests on me and stuff. I was like, no. I've got to get up there. He's dying. My husband's leaving. I've got to go up there. I do this all the time. Don't worry about me. So they were like, they just looked like at each other like, are you kidding me? Her husband's really up there? So then they talked about it and figured maybe she's just having a reaction because she knows her husband's dying, was sort of I don't know, because I wasn't really listening very good. When you're like that, your hearing either gets really good or really bad. I've noticed when I've done this before, but mine got really bad because usually it gets really good, when you get really close to dying, but this time it got really bad because all I could, my conscious was with him. It's like a psychic, my psychic soul was not all in my body. It was a lot upstairs with him. So I could feel him and hear him, and he was asking where I was. So they said, well, if you feel like it, or whatever. But I just got up and went. They had to take out I think they'd run an IV or something, but it was too late. But, they pulled that out. But they let me go back up. So I just walked back upstairs. I didn't know if I wanted a wheelchair. And I was like, no. So I walked back up, and that's when we brought the nurses. He was getting bad off by then, and I was saying, well, what are y'all doing? And they gave him some fluid bags because, he was a diabetic, and they didn't know what was on it. He was saying, no, don't worry, Theresa, I'm dying, and I don't want this. And I said, well, have you got anything you want to say or anything? He said, yeah, I didn't hit Cheney. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, why would you say that? He says, I don't know. I was just mad at him, but I didn't really hit him. But I did have a conversation with Reagan about Cheney. So I was like, okay. So that was all they did. And then they said, well, we got to get him somewhere like ICU. I said, well, where's that? They said, that's downstairs. So we put him, gurney, the bed, you just click it up, and we rolled him downstairs.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm dying. I'm going to die. And I went, oh. He had a real bad pain because that hole in his lung had burst. We didn't know what was wrong with him, and they wouldn't. I said, can't you give him anything? The lady in ICU didn't have any orders or nothing. Usually when you're really in pain and you need something, there's nobody to give it to you. So his doctor wasn't there. It was around 6. He'd already gone for the day. But somehow I went outside.
He's dying, and they're not giving him any pain meds. So it's like tough. You should you're on your own. You're going to die in pain.
You're going to die on your own. Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible with the DNR because do not resuscitate. Same thing with Gigi. But so he's just laying there. And so at the end, when I see him get up, the doctor came in and they said, we got one more procedure we can cut and put in through his leg, but this will be the last attempt. And he asked me about it. I said, it's up to him. And I said, Tom, I don't know if it'll keep you here or not, but you want to try it? And he said, well, not really, but he agreed. It's because they told him, well, it may bring you back around. So they put a cut in his right leg, and where the thin part is between your leg and your upper, they go in right there at the crease where you know what I'm talking about, right? Where your leg's the skinniest.
The groin.
And so they put some medicine in and it pushed his heart up. He sat up straight up in the bed, and he said, I can't breathe. And then he went back with his eyes open, and he looked over at me and my eyes, and then grabbed his hand. And the doctor said, he's dying. And the nurses were going to grab the resuscitation. They were yelling, and 2 other nurses yelled, no, he doesn't want that. He wants to die. He's got a DNR. I remember upstairs, and one nurse looked at me in my eyes and gritted her teeth because she knew he wanted to die because she'd known him from being in there a few times. And he wanted to die. He'd wanted to die before. He wanted to leave this planet. And I'd made a pact with him, the 20 years, and he could leave. That's what he came back to the planet for. That's a whole other show, isn't it, Janet? But anyway, I looked at him, and split up. Part of him became a baby, Johanna, and he looked at me like a baby, a brand new, and he had his little fist up around his mouth. And so I knew then a part of him went over to the nursery to be reborn. And then a part of him was looking up in the corner. So these were different faces, folks, of our personalities. So one looked up in the corner and smiled, and that's when his sisters needed to know, he'd be okay with heaven. But they think he saw his mother because he smiled and he looked real happy. And then another part of him got up, and the darker shadow got up and walked out the window. Part of him, and his sister was standing over there at one time, but she wasn't there now. But he walked right where she had been standing, which I thought, damn, was that Faye? And I looked again. I was like, no, Faye's not standing there, because she'd run out because he was dying and ran everybody out. So I went, well, who was that? So it was him. Janet Richard Knight's calling right now. No, I'm on the phone. Anyway, and so let's see, that's three. So one was looking up, which we know a lot of people can see. If you see somebody die, they look up at the corner and they smile. And then some people have said they wondered if they were reborn and go to babies. And I saw him turn to a baby, so I believe part of him was reborn. Then a part of him walked out the window, the shadow part. Then there's two other parts left. One was his higher self, and I think goes straight up like a white ghost. I don't know what you call that. And the other part was his ET self, and his little body at the very end sort of shrunk. You know how the life force, the water, goes out, and he looked like a little tiny gray being, with the eyes sort of sunk in and dark, and the little skull, and he had his hair shaved off. So he looked like a little gray human, which we had talked about, that the ones we saw were just humans. They look like little thin Japanese or people from, you see over in Hitler's time, all those people in those places where they were starving to death. Yeah. So that's sort of the five faces of Tom, but it could be anybody, right?
But let me ask you one question about the baby part. So you got the impression he went to the nursery and was born. Did you ever look up who was born that day?
I wanted to so bad that night. I wanted to so bad. And so part of me, being a curious investigator, humanoid person, really wanted to go. But see, it was already late. It was by this time it was 11, 12 at night, and the nursery was closed. I even asked about it. They said, oh, no, the nursery's closed because they pull the curtains and stuff, But, I did. I mentioned it to one of the nurses. I swear, you think he could have been reborn? They said, it's possible. But I said, can I go with it? And they said, well, it's closed, honey, because my husband just died, But I did. I really did invest. In my mind, I thought, I can't leave him right now, but I had to clean him up. I had to wash. Well, I didn't have to, but they asked me, or they allowed me to. And they told, when they came to pick him up, they told whoever, his sisters and stuff, oh, no, she's already. I stayed with him another 2.5 hours talking to him, and cleaning him up, wiping him down and getting him ready for burial and all that. So, and then they came and got him and stuck him in a freezer for a week, and then they buried him on December 7th. So he died on December 2nd. They buried his body on December 7th. Yeah, and the year before that, Johanna, I'll never forget this. I still have nightmares about it. And I have a YouTube I play. He asked me not to play it. It made him sad. It was music. And it was about Let the Sea King Die. And it was December 7th on D-Day. And he was sitting in his wheelchair at the table in the kitchen. It was dark. And I was in my bedroom in the back, and the bathroom was across. But I looked at him, and he's so sad. So I said, honey, what are you thinking about? You look so sad. He just wouldn't say nothing. I said, is there anything I can do? And just shook his head no. His head was bent. That was a year before we buried him. But every December 7th, he'd get really, really sad. I think he knew he was going to die. Well, that's when we buried him. That's also Pearl Harbor Day. Pearl Harbor Day. I think he had past lives in Pearl Harbor, but he didn't believe in all that stuff like I do or talk about with you ladies. He He wasn't, you know, he could read people. He was a good psychic, and he used playing cards. But